Hey there. Welcome in. This deep dive is going to be a little different. You know, we like to take our time. But this one, we're aiming for something a bit more potent, a kind of aha in a flash. You with me?
Absolutely. It's like, think of it this way, you're looking for that concentrated dose of knowledge. But don't worry, we'll unpack it so it really sticks.
Exactly. And what we're diving into today is something ancient, powerful, and surprisingly relevant. We're talking about the Crux Ansata. You probably know it better as the Ankh.
Yeah, the Ankh.
Yeah, I
But
go.
we're going way beyond the basic image here. We're going to explore how the Law of One actually suggests it's like a coded map, almost a blueprint of energy, of life itself.
Okay, wait a minute. A coded map. That makes it sound way more complex than just a symbol, right?
It is. Think of it like a hidden instruction manual for how reality works, encoded in this ancient form.
So it's not just a pretty picture, there's serious depth to it.
Oh, absolutely. Rader themselves said in Section 96 that it was designed in order that in its own time it be deciphered. And that's what we're going to try to do today.
Decode the Ankh. I'm in. But to do that, we need to set a course, right? What's our mission in this deep dive? What do we want to understand about the Ankh?
Well, our goal is to uncover the many layers of meaning the Ankh holds. Like we'll look at its shape, its geometry, and how it potentially encodes fundamental principles of energy. Then we'll explore its symbolism, how it speaks to the deep parts of our minds, especially the archetypal mind as described in the tarot. And finally, we'll see how it can even be used as a tool, almost a technology, for understanding and working with energy and consciousness.
Okay, so we've got geometry, symbolism, and practical application. That's a lot to cover.
It is, but it's all connected. It all
Yeah.
comes back to this idea of the Ankh as a coded map. A map of what, you ask? Well, Ra is very specific about that.
They are. Okay, lay it on me. What's this map a map of?
So in session 55, Ra says that shapes like the Ankh are all about the placing in coded form of mathematical relationships. And that's what this map is all about. It's like these mathematical relationships are the key to understanding how energy flows, how it transforms.
So it's not just about energy in general. It's about the fundamental rules, the underlying patterns that govern energy.
Exactly. Like the Ankh encodes those rules in its very form. It's not just a random shape, it's a precise design. And that design is what makes it so potent.
Okay, I'm starting to see how deep this goes. So the Ankh is a map of these underlying energetic principles.
Mhm.
What else does it represent?
Well, there's this idea of transformation, which is central to the Ankh. It's about the flow and integration of life force energy, and also about personal journeys of inner awakening.
Transformation makes sense. Life, death, rebirth, the whole cycle. But how does the Ankh actually achieve this through its geometry? Like, what's so special about its shape?
Think of it like this. Just as mathematical equations describe the physical laws of the universe, the Ankh's geometry is like an equation, but for energy and consciousness. It's a visual representation of how these forces operate and interact.
Okay, so the shape itself is like a language. It's speaking to us, but in a way we might not immediately understand.
Exactly. And that's where the decoding comes in. We need to learn to read this language to understand the message encoded in the Ankh's form.
All right, I'm ready to learn. But before we get too deep into the geometry, let's touch on the symbolism of the Ankh, because we're talking about the archetypal mind here, especially its role in the tarot.
Right. So you see the Ankh a lot in the Egyptian major arcana, but it's not just a general symbol of life there. It's like a marker on a path of initiation, of self-discovery.
Okay, a map and a path, I like it. So where does this path lead? What's the symbolism telling us?
Well, session 94 gives us some clues. Ra describes the circle at the top of the Ankh as representing the magic of the spirit, and the cross as that nature of manifestation which may only be valued by the losing.
Valued by the losing. That's an interesting phrase. What does that mean? Like, we gain something by losing something else.
Exactly. It's like, think about it. To truly appreciate something, sometimes you have to let go of something else. To grow, you have to shed old skins.
Okay, so it's not just about what we gain. It's about what we're willing to release, to let go of.
Precisely. The circle, that loop at the top, it represents the eternal, the infinite, the realm of pure spirit, of possibilities. But that cross, it represents the world of form, of experience, of manifestation. And the point is, true understanding of this world, of life itself, comes through sacrifice.
So it's not necessarily negative. It's more like surrendering to the process of change, letting go of attachments to things that might be holding us back.
Yes. It's about recognizing that clinging to form can actually limit us,
That really resonates with Ra's description of the Ankh as an image of the eternal in and through manifestation. It's like the Ankh is bridging those two realms.
Exactly. It's a visual representation of that constant interplay between the formless and the formed, between spirit and matter. And it reminds us that these aren't separate, they're different aspects of the same thing.
The Ankh is showing us that unity, that interconnectedness.
Absolutely. And that echoes the core message of the law of one. All is one. It's about recognizing that the eternal flows through the manifested world, and it also exists beyond it. And the Ankh beautifully captures that dynamic.
So we've got this amazing symbol that encodes the laws of energy, represents transformation, and points towards the unity of all things. That's a lot for one shape.
It is, and there's more. We can actually work with the Ankh, use it as a tool for our own growth.
Wait, we can use it? How?
Remember, in session 49, Ra tells us that visualization is the tool of the adept. And that's where things get really interesting.
You mean by visualizing the Ankh, we can actually affect something?
Potentially, yes.
Ah.
By focusing our attention on the Ankh, we can tap into its inherent energy. It's like tuning ourselves to a specific frequency.
It's like the Ankh is a key, and
Yeah.
by focusing on it, we can unlock something within ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes it a spiritual catalyst. It helps us to activate certain energies, to align ourselves with higher intelligence, and maybe even achieve things that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we use the Ankh for this kind of work?
Well, visualization is key. Imagine the Ankh in your mind's eye, as vividly as you can. Feel its shape, its energy. Let it resonate within you.
That sounds pretty simple, but powerful. Now let's move on to something else that's pretty powerful. The Great Pyramid.
Ah, yes, the Great Pyramid, another structure filled with mystery and power.
And our sources suggest there's a connection between the Ankh and the pyramid. Can you tell us more about that?
In session 55, Ra mentions that the Ankh relates to the resonance in the pyramid, and that both are a coded form of mathematical relationships.
So they're both built on similar principles, these mathematical relationships that govern energy.
That's what it seems like. Ra implies that the ancient Egyptians understood these principles deeply and used them in both their architecture and their symbolism.
So the Ankh is like a portable version of the pyramid's energy.
That's one way to look at it. It's like the Ankh captures some of the pyramid's power in a smaller, more accessible form.
Wow, that's fascinating. So we've got the Ankh, this powerful symbol that encodes the laws of energy and resonates with the Great Pyramid. But how does all of this relate to us, to our own bodies and energy systems?
Well, remember those mathematical relationships we talked about? They're not just abstract concepts. They might actually be the key to understanding how energy flows through our own energy centers, which some call chakras.
So the Ankh could help us understand and even heal ourselves.
It's possible. Think about it. Ra describes healing as the realignment of distortions within our energy centers. And in session 55, they talk about how light can interrupt life energies, causing those distortions.
So could the Ankh, through its geometry, help to realign those energies?
It could. Maybe by acting as a kind of energetic template, a resonant form that encourages our energy centers to return to a balanced state.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, wait, we're talking about energy centers here,
Yeah.
chakras. And in session 51, Rod actually gives some pretty detailed descriptions of their shapes.
They do, don't they?
Mm.
It's fascinating. Like the red energy center is described as a spoked wheel, the orange is a three-petaled flower, the yellow is a many-faceted star, and so on.
That's super specific, and it makes me wonder, could there be a connection between those shapes and the Ankh's geometry? Like, could they interact in some way?
It's certainly a possibility. After all, we're talking about the same fundamental principles here. The same mathematical relationships that govern energy might be at play in both the Ankh and our own energy systems.
So we might be able to use the Ankh to work with our own energy centers, using its geometry to harmonize and balance them. Now, another energetic concept I want to talk about is Kundalini, the powerful upward flow of energy described in many spiritual traditions. Where does the Ankh fit into that?
That's a great question. Remember, in session 49, Ra describes Kundalini as a meeting point of upward and downward spiraling energy. Like there's this flow from the earth drawing upwards and another flow of universal energy spiraling downwards from within.
So it's a meeting of two forces, like a cosmic dance.
Exactly. And if you look at the Ankh, its very structure seems to represent this dynamic. The vertical line of the Ankh could symbolize that upward and downward flow. The loop at the top could represent the source of universal energy, and the crossbar could represent the plane of manifestation where those forces meet.
It's like the Ankh is holding a blueprint for that integration of cosmic and earthly energies within us.
It really is. And speaking of integration, Ra also talks about the idea of a healer being like a living ankh or pyramid. What do you think they mean by that?
Well, a healer works with energy, right? And we've already established that both the Ankh and the pyramid are all about energy.
Right, so in session 66, Ra describes a highly developed healer, someone who's crystallized, as being analogous to a pyramid in action. They talk about energy circulating through the healer's energy centers, flowing upwards and then outwards.
So the healer is channeling energy, just like a pyramid channels energy.
Exactly. And the Ankh fits into this because it, too, represents that flow of energy through a structured system.
So it's not just about directing energy, it's about embodying that energy, becoming a conduit for it. And that brings us back to the pyramid, particularly its role as a healing chamber.
The King's Chamber, specifically, Rand describes it as the main space used for healing in session 55.
Right. And they say it was intentionally designed that way. The shape, the dimensions, the alignment, everything was meant to create a specific resonance that could rebalance energy fields.
And remember, the Ankh is directly linked to that same resonance. It's described as a coded expression of those same mathematical relationships that give the pyramid its power.
So the Ankh and the pyramid work on the same principles, just at different scales.
Precisely. One is massive, architectural, the other is personal, symbolic, but both can be used to work with and transform energy.
And that transformation often involves a journey, a process of initiation. And our sources actually talk about the Ankh representing the path of initiation within the pyramid.
They do. And it makes sense when you think about it. The Queen's Chamber is described as the place of the initiate, where they receive balanced in-streaming light through all their energy centers, culminating in the Indigo Center, which is like the gateway to intelligent infinity.
And the Ankh symbolism mirrors that journey perfectly.
It really does. Like the loop at the top represents the infinite source, the crossbar represents the balance we need to find in the manifested world, and the vertical stem represents the path of spiritual ascent, which is the path of initiation.
So the Ankh isn't just a symbol, it's a map of that inner journey, a guide for those seeking to unlock their potential.
Absolutely. And speaking of unlocking potential, we can't forget about crystals.
Right, because Ra also talks about crystals being used in conjunction with the pyramid's energy for healing.
They do. In session 57, Ra draws a connection between our energy system, crystals, and the pyramid, suggesting that they all work together in the healing process.
So using crystals, the pyramid's energy, and perhaps even the Ankh could be a really powerful combination for healing and transformation.
It seems so. The pyramid is like a tool for configuring light, and crystals can focus and amplify that light. And then there's the Ankh, which can act as a sort of energetic template or blueprint for the process.
It's like we have all these tools available to us, these ancient technologies that we're only now beginning to rediscover and understand.
And the most important tool of all might be within us. Ra suggests in session 57 that a highly developed person, someone who's crystallized, can become like a walking king's chamber.
You mean they can embody that same energy and power?
It seems so. Their energy centers become so balanced and aligned that they're able to channel that same transformative energy that the pyramid was built to focus.
So the Ankh could be a way for us to tap into our own potential, our own inner pyramid, so to speak.
It could be. And that brings us to the Indigo Ray Center, which Ra describes as the etheric or gateway body, a form of light that can be molded with focused intention.
And the Ankh has a connection to this energy center, right?
Yeah, it does. The Ankh's shape, with that infinite loop floating into the structured form of the cross, actually mirrors the way the indigo ray body works. It's like the point where spirit and matter meet, where the infinite flows into the finite.
And Ra confirms in session 92 that the Ankh represents the sign of life as the spirit enlivening matter, which connects to that gateway of the Indigo Center and the idea of consciousness continuing beyond physical life.
Precisely. It's like the Ankh is showing us how our eternal essence can move beyond the limitations of the physical.
Now let's talk about another fascinating connection, the Ankh and the High Priestess archetype in the Tarot.
Oh yes, the High Priestess, or the Potentiator of the Mind. In session 92, Ra explicitly states that the Ankh is the correct symbol for this archetype.
So the Ankh is linked to the subconscious, to intuition, to the mysteries held within us.
Absolutely. It's like the Ankh is a key to unlocking those hidden depths, to accessing that ancient wisdom that resides within us.
And there's also this idea of sacred union within this archetype, right?
Right. Ra talks about the feminine principle of the mind being like a book that needs to be penetrated, by the masculine principle.
But they're not talking about literal genders, are they?
No, they're
Or-
talking about the interplay of conscious and subconscious, the merging of logic and intuition, the bringing of focused awareness to our inner wisdom.
So the Ankh is also a symbol of that inner union, that sacred marriage within our own being.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so potent. It's not just about unlocking knowledge, but about experiencing that deep integration within ourselves.
Now, this idea of integration ties into another concept that Ra talks about, the tension between the matrix and the potentiator of the mind, those first two archetypes.
Yes, that's right. In session 92, Rod describes this great dynamic tension that exists between them. It's like our conscious mind, the matrix, is constantly trying to understand and integrate the vast potential of the subconscious, which is represented by the potentiator.
So it's a kind of push and pull, a dance between the known and the unknown.
Exactly. And the Ankh can be seen as a symbol of that dance, of that process of integration. It's like a guide for us to navigate that tension and ultimately achieve a state of wholeness.
And these archetypes themselves are part of a much grander design, a cosmic blueprint for our evolution.
That's what Ray suggests in session 91. They say that the 22 archetypes of our logos were specifically selected to guide us on our spiritual journeys.
So each archetype is like a pathway, a unique expression of the one infinite creator.
And the Ankh, by being associated with these archetypes, connects us to those pathways, allowing us to tap into their energy and wisdom.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about magic, because Ray actually gives a very clear definition of magic in session 71.
They do. They say that magic is simply the ability to create changes in consciousness at will.
So it's not about spells and potions. It's about intentionally directing our consciousness to create change.
Exactly. And working with the Ankh, especially through focused meditation, can be seen as a form of magic.
Because by visualizing the Ankh, we're deliberately changing our state of consciousness.
Precisely. We're tuning into its energy, its frequency, and allowing it to work within us.
And Ra actually suggests in session 76 that thoughts, symbols, and forms all have a kind of existence beyond our physical reality.
That's right. They talk about these things existing in time-space, which is the realm of thought and energy.
So when we visualize the Ankh, we're not just creating an image in our minds, we're actually connecting to its pre-existing form in that other realm.
It's like we're tuning into a specific channel, a specific frequency in the cosmic energy field.
And the Ankh's geometry itself plays a crucial role in how it interacts with that energy.
Absolutely. In session 56, Ra talks about how shapes like the Ankh and the pyramid can focus upward spiraling light, which is prana, or life force energy.
So the Ankh's shape isn't just symbolic, it's functional. It's designed to work with this fundamental energy of life.
Exactly. And when you combine that with the power of crystals, which are also known for their ability to focus and amplify energy, it becomes even more potent.
Ra actually talks about this in session 58. They say that the flow of interdimensional light through crystals is primarily guided by the will of a crystallized person.
And they suggest that symbols like the Ankh can act as amplifiers in that process.
So we've got this powerful combination of intention, crystals, and sacred geometry. But what's the ultimate purpose of all of this?
Well, Ra reminds us in session 71 that the heart of white magic is the experience of the joy of union with the Creator.
So it's not about personal gain or power. It's about aligning ourselves with the source, with that fundamental unity.
Precisely. And that's where the Ankh comes full circle, because ultimately it's a symbol of that unity, of the spirit enlivening matter, of the eternal flowing through the manifest.
And it reminds us of the choice we have in how we express that unity.
That's right. Arcanum 22 in the tarot, which is often called the choice, is closely linked to the Ankh.
Because it represents the fundamental choice we all face, to serve others or to serve ourselves.
Exactly. And in session 88, Ra talks about how understanding that choice was crucial for their own evolution.
So the Ankh, in a way, is like a reminder of that choice. It's a symbol of the potential for both positive and negative polarity.
And that polarity is built into our reality. Ray explains in session 92 that it was intentionally designed that way to help us learn and grow.
So we're constantly being presented with choices, and those choices shape our reality.
And the Ankh, as a symbol of that choice, can help us to navigate those choices more consciously.
And it does so by speaking to the deeper parts of ourselves, the subconscious mind.
That's right. Raz says that archetypes and symbols can bypass our rational mind and speak directly to our subconscious.
So by working with the Ankh, we're not just thinking about it logically, we're allowing it to resonate with us at a deeper level.
And that's where its true power lies. Because the subconscious is where those fundamental patterns, those archetypal energies reside.
And that's where real transformation can occur. Now, we also have to consider the veiling process, which Rao talks about in session 93, because that veiling actually amplified the intensity of polarity in our reality.
Exactly. Before the veil, the distinction between service to self and service to others wasn't as pronounced.
So the Ankh, within this veiled reality, takes on an even deeper meaning. It becomes a symbol of the choice we face within this heightened polarity.
It's like a map for navigating this reality, a guide for choosing the path of service.
And that choice is ultimately a choice about how we direct our energy, which Ross says is inherently spiraling.
Right. They confirm in session 56 that light spirals, and that this spiraling energy is influenced by magnetic fields and shapes like the Ankh.
So the Ankh can help us to consciously work with this spiraling energy.
It can. It can act as a personal portal for that energy, allowing us to direct it more intentionally.
Now, if you look at the structure of the Ankh, you can actually see how it might be designed to work with that spiraling energy.
That's right. Like the loop at the top could be seen as a receiver for the initial influx of energy, the crossbar could be a point of stabilization, and the stem could be a pathway for that energy to spiral upwards.
So the Ankh is guiding that energy, transforming it as it moves through those stages.
Exactly. And that transformation ultimately leads to a higher state of consciousness, which is the goal of spiritual evolution.
And that evolution begins with an understanding of the matrix and the potentiator, the fundamental archetypes that govern our inner circuitry.
Ray describes them as the first stage of that circuitry in session 78. And the Ankh, as a symbol of the High Priestess, can help us to tap into the potentiator, that vast reservoir of subconscious potential.
So it's about activating those deeper parts of ourselves, bringing them into conscious awareness. And that process of activation and integration might actually occur at a specific point within the Ankh's geometry.
It's possible. Remember, Ra talks about a point of turning where light undergoes a transformation, becoming more coherent and organized.
And if you look at the Ankh, there's a central point where the loop, the crossbar, and the stem all converge.
That could be that point of turning, the place where energy is transmuted, transformed into a higher state.
So we've explored the Ankh's geometry, its symbolism, its connection to energy, consciousness, and even the Great Pyramid. But ultimately, what does it all mean for us, for our understanding of life and our place in the universe?
Well, Ra consistently emphasizes that the Ankh is a sign of life, of the spirit enlivening matter. But in session 94, they give us a more expansive view, describing it as an image of the eternal in and through manifestation and beyond manifestation through the sacrifice and transformation of that which is manifest.
So it's not just about life in this physical reality. It's about the eternal journey of the soul, the continuous cycle of death and rebirth, of transformation and evolution.
Exactly. And it reminds us that that journey is ultimately about returning to the source, to the one infinite creator.
And that journey isn't always easy. It requires effort, dedication, and a willingness to let go of what no longer serves us.
Which brings us back to the idea of the Ankh as a symbol of choice. Because ultimately, we choose the path we take. We choose how we direct our energy. We choose how we express the creator within us.
And that choice is reflected in everything we do, in every thought, word, and deed.
And the Ankh, as a symbol of that choice, can help us to make those choices more consciously, more aligned with our true nature.
But remember, Ra tells us in session 96 that the Ankh was designed in order that in its own time it be deciphered. So the meaning might not be immediately obvious. It might take time, contemplation, and inner work to truly unlock its secrets.
Exactly. And the Ankh's connection to the Great Pyramid, with its initiatory chambers, suggests that there's a process of initiation involved in understanding it.
So it's not just about intellectual knowledge. It's about experiential understanding, about integrating the wisdom of the Ankh into our very being.
Precisely. And that integration begins with the archetypal mind, with those fundamental patterns of consciousness that Ra describes in session 94.
The circle representing the magic of spirit, the cross representing the lessons learned through manifestation and loss.
It's all there, encoded in that simple yet profound symbol.
And ultimately, it's all about expressing the creator more fully, more beautifully, more lovingly.
That's the heart of it all. And the Ankh, as a symbol of that journey, can guide us towards that ultimate goal.
So there you have it, the Ankh. More than just a symbol of life. It's a map, a guide, a tool, a reminder. It's a key to unlocking our potential and aligning ourselves with the one infinite creator.
And the most exciting part, it's up to each of us to discover what it means for ourselves, to explore its depths, to contemplate its mysteries, and to allow it to guide us on our own unique journeys of transformation.
So take some time with the Ankh, see what resonates with you, meditate on it, contemplate it, and see what wisdom it reveals. You might be surprised at what you discover.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. It's not just about giving you information, but about giving you tools to explore your own inner landscape, your own connection to the infinite.
Because ultimately, the Ankh is about remembering who we truly are. It's about recognizing our own divinity, our own potential, and our own power to create a more beautiful and loving world.
And on that note, we leave you to your own explorations. May the Ankh guide you, inspire you, and illuminate your path.
Until next time.
Safe travels.